She was 75 with silver hair that framed her face like poetry and hands that had held too much in this life. Children, grief, hope. Her name was Miriam. She leaned across the table, lowered her voice, and said something I've carried with me ever since. I wasn't lonely when I was alone. I only felt lonely when I had to hide parts of myself to make someone else stay. That was it. No dramatics, no bitterness, just a gentle truth from someone who had lived long enough to finally stop apologizing for wanting peace. Miriam had loved, lost, and loved again. 2 marriages, 3 kids, 7 grandchildren. She had held her husband's hand through illness. She had buried her parents, outlived her sister, and made casseroles for every neighbor who needed one. But now she lived alone. Not in silence, but in serenity. She kept wine chimes on the porch, not because she was whimsical, but because she liked hearing something gentle when the world outside turned too loud. We live in a world that worships couples. We're told that aging without a partner is some kind of failure, that single means sad, that solitude means something's wrong. But today, I want to offer you a different truth. What if solitude is not a symptom, but a gift? What if being single after 70 isn't about what you're missing, but about finally remembering who you are when no one else is shaping your day? You don't have to explain your singleness. You don't have to defend it. You just have to feel at peace with it. Because there is a kind of power in living alone, especially after a life spent serving others. There is a power in waking up and knowing the day is yours. There's no negotiation over breakfast. No quiet resentment over differing routines. No tiptoeing around someone else's moods or medications. Just you, your breath, your time, your terms. And for many seniors, that isn't loneliness. That is freedom. In this video, we're going to explore 7 powerful reasons why choosing to stay single after 70 might not only be wise, it might be the best decision you make for your health, your joy, and your peace. But first, I want to introduce you to a few people. Real people who, like you, were told to seek companionship and then discovered something else instead. Let's get started with 1. Emotional exhaustion from new conflict. Meet Doris, age 78. Doris had been married to Harold for 42 years. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was steady. After his passing, her kids encouraged her to date again. "You're still young enough to find someone," they said. And so she did. She met Gerald, polite, punctual, full of good intentions. They went on walks, watched old movies, and shared pie at a cafe on Wednesdays. But as the months passed, she began to feel tired. Not tired from age, tired from explaining herself again. Why she likes to go to bed early. Why she doesn't want the television on while eating. Why she needs silence in the mornings. Every little difference became a conversation. Every preference, a compromise. Every disagreement, a reminder that relationships, even gentle ones, can be emotionally expensive. One afternoon, after a quiet argument about nothing in particular, Doris stood up, walked to her bedroom, and sat in the dark for an hour. Not crying, just thinking. That night, she ended the relationship. "I didn't mind being alone," she told me. "I minded being misunderstood." The insight in here. At 30, we bend. At 50, we negotiate. But at 70? At 70, many of us are finally tired of justifying our inner peace. Our emotional recovery slows with age. What once felt like a small disagreement now lingers. Our nervous systems are more fragile. Stress seeps into our bones. Sleep suffers. Our joy feels interrupted. Choosing to be single isn't a rejection of love. It's an embrace of stillness. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to say, "I no longer have the energy to fight for space in my own life." 2. Financial stability. and the risk of losing it. Meet Ray, age 80. Ray was a retired engineer, careful, conservative with money. He had planned well, paid off his mortgage, put his children through school, had a modest but steady pension. After losing his wife of 50 years, Ray wasn't sure he wanted to start over, but he missed companionship. He met Linda at a library event. She was charming, spirited. They connected quickly. After 6 months, they decided to live together. That's when things started shifting. She liked eating out 5 times a week. She bought throw pillows for every room. She gifted herself spa appointments using their shared account. When Ray brought it up gently, she looked hurt. "I thought we were building a life together," she said. Ray didn't argue. He just withdrew. He started second-guessing every financial move. He felt guilty for wanting to protect what he'd built. His peaceful retirement began to feel like a negotiation table. One morning, he looked at his bank balance and whispered, "I didn't feel like a partner. I felt like an ATM with a couch." The insight in here. In your later years, money isn't just money. It's security. It's independence. It's a reflection of your life's work. Introducing a partner into that space, especially one who doesn't understand or respect your financial values, can unravel decades of careful planning. And once money becomes emotional, it becomes hard to separate trust from tension. Staying single doesn't mean you're selfish. It means your legacy, your comfort, and your dignity stay within your control. You can be generous. You can gift freely. But you don't have to ask permission to enjoy what you've earned. 3. The disruption of routine and sacred space. One meet Jean, age 74. Jean had her mornings down to a rhythm. 6:30 a.m., wake up. 6:45, soft-boiled egg and toast. 7 o'clock, devotional reading on the porch, listening to bird song. It wasn't a ritual, it was a sanctuary. Then came Harold. Not the same Harold Doris dated, a different one. He was lovely, loved jazz, brought her flowers, cooked breakfast on Saturdays. At first it was sweet, but soon his loud morning shows filled the kitchen. He rearranged her spice rack. He questioned why she read so much. She smiled through it, until one morning she couldn't. "I miss my own company more than I enjoyed his," she confessed. She ended the relationship with kindness. Then she sat back on her porch, warm mug in hand, and felt the quiet return like an old friend. The insight in here. You've spent decades fine-tuning your life, your home, your routines, your silence. They're not small things. They are the threads of your well-being. A partner may not storm in like a tornado, but even small breezes can scatter the things that keep you whole. Being single doesn't mean being without love. It means choosing not to compromise your sanctuary. And for many, that's the most beautiful love story of all. The next is the hidden costs of companionship. 4. Becoming a caregiver without warning. Meet Carl, age 77. Carl never imagined he'd fall in love again after 70. He met Alice at a senior book club. She had soft eyes, a bright laugh, and a habit of humming while she read. It felt good to smile again, to share meals, to talk about life without glancing at a clock. Within months, she moved in. He rearranged his quiet life to make space for her. But not long after, Alice's health began to shift. Subtle at first, forgetting appointments, trouble with stairs. Then suddenly, doctor visits, mobility aids, prescriptions, fear. Carl didn't hesitate. He helped. He cooked. He reminded her to take her pills. He bathed her, gently with trembling hands. But the joy began to drain, not because he didn't care, but because he was already tired. He told me once, or staring at the floor of my office, "I love her, but I'm too old to lose myself again." The insight in here. We often romanticize caregiving, and in many ways it is love in its purest form. But love doesn't always mean sacrifice without limit. For those over 70, caregiving, especially when it's unexpected, can take a dangerous toll, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And when you're the one giving, who's left to care for you? Carl stopped going to his men's breakfast club. He missed his great-granddaughter's piano recital. He began forgetting his own medications. What began as companionship turned into quiet collapse. Being single after 70 doesn't mean you're unwilling to care. It means you're wise enough to recognize when your body, your mind, and your spirit need to come first. Staying single allows many to preserve their health, protect their energy, and offer support to others from a place of strength, not depletion. Because compassion shouldn't cost you your well-being, and you're allowed to choose gentle boundaries over quiet burnout. 5. Family strain and inheritance confusion. Meet Eileen, age 69. Eileen never thought dating again would hurt anyone. She had 2 grown sons, both successful, both kind. After her husband passed, she spent 6 years alone before meeting Dennis. He was polite, warm, a retired history teacher who brought her flowers every Friday. But when she told her sons, their smiles faded. At first, it was subtle, shorter phone calls, less laughter. Then came the questions. Are you merging bank accounts? Is he moving in? Have you updated your will? Eileen was heartbroken. I couldn't tell if they were worried about me, she said, or just worried about what they'd lose. Over time, her sons became guarded, cold, suspicious of her choices. Eventually, she let Dennis go. I couldn't bear the tension, she said. It felt like I was choosing between love and loyalty. The insight in here. Later in life, love doesn't just involve 2 hearts. It involves entire family systems, blended families, estate plans, emotional histories, old resentments, and sometimes your happiness becomes someone else's discomfort. Inheritance complications can turn gentle families into fractured ones. New relationships can bring division, even when intentions are pure. But staying single, it can offer emotional clarity. It allows you to honor your family relationships without tension, to preserve peace, to ensure your legacy, financial and emotional, remains intact and respected. Because after decades of building love and trust with your children and grandchildren, you deserve to enjoy your golden years without navigating silent wars. You don't owe anyone explanations for choosing yourself. You only owe yourself peace. The last is the freedom that comes with saying no. 6. The loss of spontaneity and freedom. Meet Walt, age 76. Walt had spent 40 years working long days and coming home to a full house. But now, retirement looked different. He'd wake up early, toss a fishing rod in the truck, and disappear into the stillness of a misty lake. Sometimes he'd drive for hours just to visit a roadside diner he'd read about in a travel magazine. I love being able to just go, he said. Then he met someone. She was kind, gentle, but rooted. She didn't like the outdoors. She didn't like last-minute plans. She didn't like being apart for more than a few hours. And slowly, Walt found himself checking in before every decision, canceling trips, losing the spontaneity that once fed his soul. I started asking for permission to live my own life, he said, and I hated that. The insight in here. In your younger years, compromise might have felt like connection, but in your later years, it can feel like confinement. Being single isn't about shutting out love. It's about protecting the life you've crafted so carefully. It means eating cereal for dinner without judgment, reading late into the night without explanation, rearranging your home without someone questioning your choices. And that kind of freedom, it's not luxury, it's not indulgent, it's earned. 7. The pressure to settle. Meet Judy, age 72. Every friend she had was coupled up. Church socials, potlucks, dinners, Trips. Judy always sat at the end of the table, smiling politely, carrying the weight of everyone's good intentions. You'll meet someone. You're too wonderful to be alone. Don't you want companionship? She did. Of course, she did. So when Henry came along, well-dressed, punctual, a gentleman, she said yes, even though he didn't make her laugh, even though they disagreed about almost everything, even though, deep down, she felt lonelier with him than without him. I stayed, she admitted, because I didn't want to be the last one alone. 6 months later, she ended it, quietly, gracefully, and when she did, she sat alone in her kitchen, poured herself a glass of wine and whispered, "I feel like myself again." The insight in here, there is no timer ticking down on your value, no expiration date on your worth. Being single after 70 is not a failure. It's often a form of liberation. Choosing solitude from a place of strength is far more powerful than accepting a partnership from a place of fear. You don't have to settle for maybe. You don't have to apologize for waiting for more. And you don't have to explain why just okay is no longer good enough. The greatest lie we're told is that being alone means being unloved. But Judy discovered what many brave seniors eventually learn, that loving yourself fully is the most beautiful kind of companionship there is. So here we are. 7 reasons, 7 real lives, 7 stories that began with hope, but ended with something even stronger: clarity. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you recognizes this truth. Staying single after 70 isn't about loneliness. It's about liberation. We live in a world that constantly whispers, "You're only complete if you're coupled. You're only valuable if someone chooses you. You're only happy if you're sharing a dinner table." But for many older adults, those who've lived long, loved hard, and lost deeply, those whispers begin to sound like noise. And one day something shifts. You sit in your favorite chair, feel the stillness around you, sip your tea, and realize, this silence doesn't hurt, it heals. In your 30s, you might have been proud of how much you could give. In your 50s, you learned how to balance sacrifice and self-care. But in your 70s, your greatest gift is knowing exactly what your heart cannot afford to lose again. You've learned that emotional energy is finite. You've learned that peace is more precious than performance. And you've learned that not every dinner needs 2 place settings to feel full. This season isn't about explaining your choices. It's about finally making them freely. You don't need to bend. You don't need to rush. You don't need to negotiate your joy. You are allowed to wake up and say, "I am enough, as I am, alone, but never lonely." Let me talk to you about the power of solitude. When you are single after 70, you reclaim things most people don't even realize they've lost. You reclaim, 1, your routine. You eat when you're hungry. You rest when you're tired. You don't apologize for how you spend your hours. 2, your emotions. No one's mood dictates your day. Your joy isn't filtered through someone else's silence or sighs. 3, your resources. You save, spend, gift, or splurge without having to explain your decisions. 4, your space. Your home reflects your soul. Every book, blanket, and quiet moment belongs only to you. 5, your story. You decide how this chapter is written, no co-author required, and you don't owe anyone a performance. You don't have to smile through discomfort just to keep peace. You don't have to settle for good enough to avoid awkward dinners with couples. You don't have to rush into companionship because your friends feel sorry for your single chair at the table. Let them feel what they want. Let them think what they will. Because here's what you know, and what so many miss. There is nothing lonelier than being in the wrong relationship. And there is nothing more fulfilling than waking up with your soul at ease. The end, but not the end. It's the quiet victory. Meet Hazel. age 83. Hazel has lived alone for the last 15 years. After a brief second marriage that ended in heartbreak, she told me, "I finally realized I don't want someone who fills my home. I want what fills my heart." Hazel has a front porch where the breeze sings through the wind chimes. She grows lavender. She writes letters to her granddaughter. And every night she prays, not for a partner, but for peace. And when she lays her head down, she sleeps without tension. Not because her life is empty, but because it's finally hers. So, this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a chapter most people are too afraid to write. A chapter called I Chose Myself. You can still love. You can still connect. You can still dance in your living room and laugh until your ribs hurt. But your days are yours again. Your energy is sacred. Your home is yours to protect. Your joy is no longer a performance. It's a birthright. So tonight I ask you to take a breath. Look around at your quiet kitchen, your favorite chair, your unshared blanket. And instead of thinking, "No one is here with me," say, "I am finally here with me." That is not loneliness. That is liberation. And now, try asking that. Which of these reasons spoke to you most? Comment below. 1 for emotional freedom, 2 for financial clarity, 3 for protecting your daily rhythm, 4 for avoiding unexpected caregiving, 5 for avoiding family tension, 6 for maintaining independence, 7 for resisting pressure to settle. We read every comment because your story helps someone else feel seen. Subscribe to Dear Senior's Life if you haven't already, because this community is built on stories, support, and strength. We don't tell you what to do. We just remind you what you already know. That aging isn't about decline. It's about discovery. The discovery of rest, of freedom, of joy that answers to no one but you. Your later years are not the slow fade of a life once lived. They are the bright, burning sunrise of your fullest, freest self. Welcome home. We're rooting for you. With all our heart, Dear Senior's Life.